Hey guys, so we're doing another fan commentary for Wallace and Gromit shorts, and this is The Wrong Trousers, which is actually my personal favourite of the shorts. So yeah, again, no footage, so you will just have to find your own feed of it. It's on Netflix in this country, maybe on Netflix in whatever country you're in as well. But yeah, regardless, just go find your own feed. And I am pressing play now. And I'm looking at the Aardman logo right now. And that is ending now. So now we're seeing the three rocket ships on the wall. The camera's panning, a film by Nick Park. And that is disappearing now. Picture of Wallace and Gromit text on screen. And now we're panning down to the trousers. Okay, that should be enough to make sure you're synced up. So yeah, this interesting sort of opening this, kind of done in the style of those sort of 30s or 50s horror films or thrillers. They did with the style of that sort of text they have on there. You almost expect it to be in black and white with that kind of style. And yeah, more of a sort of less intriguing kind of opening I think this one has. Yeah, where it's just Gromit going about his morning routine. Gromit's birthday is obviously in February because that is a 29-day month. And I guess that means it's a leap year as well. We don't know how old Gromit is, though. Is he much older than Wallace? I imagine he'd be younger than Wallace, actually. He seems more mature than Wallace, I don't know. Early establishing of the train, which of course becomes important at the end of the short. Gromit just puts aside the bills, I guess they're not his responsibility, and looks at the birthday card. Which doesn't actually say happy birthday on it, it just says to a dear dog. And doesn't play happy birthday either, it's playing he's a jolly good fellow. It's interesting though, Gromit's first up. Apparently it's his responsibility to get Wallace breakfast. In this rather sort of over-the-top elaborate way. Yeah, Nick Park was a big fan of Thunderbirds growing up. I guess that's where he's got that inspiration from. I find it interesting though that his sleeves go on before his top. Sort of seems backward to me. And of course that jam would have hit him in the face if the toast had not popped out at that particular moment. Real toasters of course do not work like that. No butter on that toast, interesting. I guess that would have been too complicated for the way that he decides to do it. Well, I tell you what you do in that case, Wallace. You put a cushion on the chair. That's another sort of iconic Wallace quote, cracking toast in that case. I don't know, does he say it in other context, the word cracking? They always try to establish that someone's largely in debt because they have a lot of bills. But the more important thing is how much those bills are for. Just because you have a lot of them doesn't mean you owe a lot of money. You could have one bill and be for an... on the flip side, you could have one bill and it be for an incredible amount of money. Bit of a cliche here, the piggy bank. Although he doesn't smash it open, which is sort of subverting the cliche, I suppose. Not a lot in there, though. Why does he have a marrow framed on the wall? I've never noticed that before. I don't really know why they have a train just powering through of its own accord through the house. But of course, that needs to be established early for the sake of the chase at the end. And it is sort of the other kind of thing about it being kind of a cartoonish world, but also being elements of realism in there as well. Is he sort of treats Gromit like an actual dog a lot of the time, with him, like here, putting a collar and a lead on him. And he walks around on all fours as well. Even though he's clearly sentient, he's had the intelligence of a human and has the sort of awareness and lives like a human, he still walks around on all fours. I love that. And apparently these techno trousers have a mind of their own. Because you can see there, even though they're wrapped up and have not been put into use yet, they're still just walking around on their own. Now, apparently there's no sellotape in use there for that wrapping bait because it just falls away as soon as he undoes the bow. So I don't know how he wrapped it. Yeah, it's interesting the way that we do these trousers. So presumably they're designed to be worn. But that's not how Wallace is using them here. Interesting. And clearly this is a present more for Wallace's benefit to save him having to walk Gromit. I mean, Gromit's got the sort of intelligence of a person. Isn't he capable of just walking himself? Ooh, went down that slide with no trousers on. That had to be painful. I don't quite understand why Wallace phrases it like that. Pre-barricading about the bush. Does he not use the word beating or something? Now, who is going to see that very small card in the window? He needs to take out an ad in the newspaper or something, doesn't he? Gromit does not seem very happy about the picto trousers. And, it's interesting the way that this short sort of starts with kind of a sort of mundane kind of start to it. You're not quite sure where it's going for a long time. Whereas it's quite obvious with A Grand Day Out what their adventure is going to be. I mean, we've got kind of a dilemma with them being in debt, sort of set up early on. But other than that, a lot of it is sort of kind of all over the place. You've got Gromit's birthday, you've got these trousers showing up, you've got Gromit not being happy about going on a walk, you've got them being in debt. But this is all important sort of setting up for later when it all sort of comes together. This one, I feel, actually isn't paced like a film like A Grand Day Out was. I feel this is paced much more like sort of an ongoing saga. Even though it's still a short, it's only half an hour. And I guess Wallace just felt like, they happened to have this spare room anyway, let's put it to use. And here we have the villain for this short, of course, Feathers McGraw. Never actually named in the dialogue. I think he's only named in a newspaper headline at the end, and of course not named in the end credits either because he doesn't have a voice actor. But that is his name, Feathers McGraw. I'm going to call him Feathers, I think, for the sake of this short. Sort of early setting up that he's kind of a thoughtless sort of person, doesn't really think much of these people that provided him with a room. He just sort of makes himself at home pretty much instantly. And is sort of thinking he's not bothered about the fact that he's just taken somebody else's room. Sort of quite a good sort of early way of getting us to dislike him. And it's amazing sort of how much you sort of understand his character sort of very early on, even though he doesn't talk and he doesn't really make any kind of expressions with his face because he doesn't have a mouth, he doesn't have eyebrows, he just has the eyes, basically. And you completely understand what he's thinking at any particular moment. It's amazing. I don't know how he walks in on Wallace here, because you don't see him until Wallace walks away. I don't quite understand what's happened there. Yeah, even a scene like this, you just see him looking at the trousers, and you can tell just from the music and the way he's looking, he's already having some kind of sinister idea. And again, early setting up of the fact that the trousers can walk up walls, as well as walking around. And I wonder if this was a case of someone in the writer's room talking about this scene and saying, well, why doesn't Gromit just go to his room and ask him to turn the music off? And say, okay, well, let's have him do that. And I guess Gromit still just has sort of basic sort of manners and courtesy and decides, well, if he's not going to come to the door, I'm not going to go in. And again, other sort of dog elements to Gromit, even though he clearly has the intelligence of a person. He sleeps in a kennel outside. And there we see, if Gromit had just gone in and seen that Feathers wasn't there, he could have just turned the music off and gone back up to bed. And I guess it's this thought that makes Gromit cry here. And here we've got a bit more expression, I think, to Gromit in this short than we had in A Grand Day Out, with the bags under his eyes. I don't think we saw that in A Grand Day Out. Cornflakes spelt with a K there. It's interesting. And this is one part which took me a while to sort of figure out when I first watched this as a kid. what is the significance of this? Feathers bringing Wallace's slippers. I think that was just sort of a bit too sort of subtle a thing for me as a kid. This was a bit more sort of obvious what was going on. You see Gromit put his head down to go get the paper, and then Feathers rushes in and steals the job off him. That's a clear sort of jealousy starting to set in. He's taken Wallace's approval away from him. And Wallace is obviously sort of oblivious to what Gromit's going through here. Yeah. I thought this was kind of a dickish move by Wallace the first time I watched it. Why doesn't he invite Gromit in? Why is Gromit not allowed to eat with them? But I don't know, I guess Wallace just assumed that Gromit was just happy on his own. Which sort of makes me wonder, why doesn't Gromit go in and consult Wallace about it? I guess because he can't speak. Maybe that's got something to do with it. He can't actually tell Wallace that he's a bit jealous and feeling a bit sort of shunned by Feathers. And so, without even talking about it, he just decides to walk out. Very sad. And again, I like the sort of wetness they give to Gromit's eyes in that scene. I don't know how they did the rain, because water's very difficult to do in stop motion. I guess maybe that's not stop motion. Maybe that's CGI superimposed later, after they finish the animation. And Feathers wastes no time in putting the next stage of his plan into effect. Just wanted Gromit to walk out, it seemed. I guess he figured, Gromit was sort of aware of him enough that he'd be able to stop him if he tried to reprogram the trousers while Gromit was in the house. But he figured Wallace was foolish enough that he could overpower him if necessary. And the bed raises up again. So again, important to establish early on what was supposed to happen there. Oh, there we have the title of the short. And Wallace, of course, just assumes that it's Gromit that's done this. Even though, I don't know, has Gromit actually programmed the trousers at any point so far? I don't quite understand the purpose of this. Why Feathers decides to have the trousers do this to Wallace. And the only thing I can think is that it's just a funny sequence. It's just something to be amusing for the audience to watch and just sort of laugh at. And I noticed actually the glove on Feathers' head there has 4 fingers, whereas I think the glove that he actually wears has 5. The other sort of Looney Tunes style cliche of the fact that if you disguise yourself with like a small thing on your head or over your face or something, nobody can recognize you. And this is clearly a scene for the trailer because he says the title of the short in there. It's the wrong trousers, Gromit. Gromit's not really at all taken aback by the fact that Wallace is just being run around in the trousers against his will. Feathers has apparently transferred the controls onto his own control pad, which seems much more practical anyway, really. If I were Wallace, I would just keep them like that. And I guess the purpose of that was just to tire Wallace out. And he's put his pyjama bottoms on over the techno trousers. Why he's done that and quite how he's done that, I have no idea. But now he can have a nice long snooze. And now Feathers puts a more sort of sensible part to his plan into effect here. Again, I don't fully understand what the purpose of that was. But now he's going to inspect the museum where he will steal the diamond from. And of course, he could have done this before Gromit walked out. But I guess, that part of his plan just came into effect a bit sooner than maybe he was expecting. This short is definitely much more about Gromit than it is Wallace and Gromit. And definitely sort of is a clear establishing here of the fact that Gromit is the brains of the organisation and Wallace is sort of the numpty, the bimbo, the sort of sidekick that doesn't really know anything and just goes, well, doesn't go along with it. It's kind of the interesting thing, Wallace is clearly sort of leading everything that they do. Gromit goes along with it, but Gromit is at the same time the brains of everything. And I'm not quite sure what Gromit thinks he's going to see here, but I guess he figures, Feathers is up to no good. He has to sort of find out everything he can, or as much as he can, just to try and figure out what his plan is and what he's going to do. Just takes a couple of measurements. That's basically it. It's just kind of fun to watch him go up and down the building with that tape measure. I guess, again, not a clear sort of purpose to the story or even establish any kind of clear plan in this scene. It's just a fun scene to watch. And apparently didn't notice Gromit watching him, even though you can quite clearly see his eyes in that box. And again, more of a kind of a sort of dickish move by Wallace, sort of not even too bothered about the fact that Gromit's clearly gone, because he's just replaced his flap with a penguin-shaped one. He may not have known that Feathers has changed the wallpaper in Gromit's room, but he has to know about that door flap. Yeah, Gromit, for the moment at least, a bit all taken aback, but there's sort of bigger things to take note of here, and that's the fact that Feathers is up to no good. He has a crime planned, which, just by chance, he's going to put into action at this very moment. And it's possible at this moment right here. It's only now that... oh no, his glove on there does have 4 fingers, I stand corrected. Yeah, it's possible only at this moment in time Gromit actually realises that Feathers is the person in that poster. He did not recognise him before without the glove. And Wallace sleeps through all of this rather miraculously. And again, I'm not entirely sure why Feathers feels like he needs Wallace for this. I guess he needs someone to put the helmet on, maybe? Yeah, why not just send the trousers up into the museum on their own, because they can clearly walk on their own. Oh, now for Gromit, the machine puts the top on first and then the sleeves, and doesn't have any toast for him at all. So I guess it's one rule for Wallace and one rule for Gromit. And then I don't quite know what Gromit is doing all this time, because it's a while before we see him again. So obviously he would have got out of Wallace's clothes, cleaned himself up, and then, he's seen Feathers go to this museum. Why didn't he just follow him there, or, assume that that's where he was going and track him down at the museum? But no, we don't see him again until Feathers gets back to the house. So, I don't know, maybe it just took Gromit that long to get out of Wallace's clothes and cleaned up. But I do love this sequence. This is the best part of the short for me. I don't know if Feathers... We're supposed to assume that Feathers has already inspected the roof, before he'd gone up there with a tape measure. Because we didn't see him go onto the roof. So how exactly does he know? But this air vent that you're going to see Wallace climb up here, how does he know that that's there? How does this noise not wake up Wallace, or anybody else for that matter? How does he know that the vent's big enough to fit the trousers and Wallace into? It's a bloody good thing it's so big. And the thing I love about this sequence here is you almost, in a sense, start rooting for Feathers. Yeah, you actually sort of want to see him succeed here, because the thought of him setting off the alarm is just so sort of agonising. No security guards, I guess. I guess they felt like that those lasers, which you're going to see in a second, was enough. Burglar. I don't quite understand why it needs to say burglar, but there you go. Yeah, it does look pretty secure when you think that you assume that a burglar is going to come in through the door. The tension builds, and he suddenly realizes, oh, the lasers are too high up. But suddenly now, Wallace does a little thing in his sleep that means he can get by. I guess it was just that one laser. It was the only one that was too high. The rest of them he was above. And this is like one of those games at the fair where, you're trying to get a cuddly toy. Oh. Reminds me of Toy Story, with the aliens. The claw! The claw is Feather's master, deciding whether or not to steal the diamond or not. Has he got it? Has he got it? Oh, fingers slipped! And I don't know how he did that. Catch it mid-air. That's incredible. Yeah, beads of sweat going down his face as well. That's amazing. And just when it looks like Feathers has succeeded, one of the tiles gives way and it's all gone kaput. And it actually takes Wallace a moment to wake up. Even the alarm didn't wake him up for a moment. And presumably, Feather's plan was to just go out the way he came in, but once the alarm goes off, that's no longer an option. And I don't know, did he know that the window could do this? I mean, he's stepping to the side, so he must have done. So why didn't he go in that way? That would have been much quicker. And it would have the diamond's right in front of the window as well. So, I don't know, maybe the window only swings one way. And I guess because, they didn't want too many characters to animate at once in stop motion, you can't actually see anybody coming towards the museum. So Feathers, even though he set the alarm off, is still able to get away. And again, it's only at this moment that Wallace recognises him. That glove just, was a remarkable disguise. Hid all his distinctive features. So now Gromit finally shows up again. I don't know what he's been doing all this time. And he thinks, well, this rolling pin will do it. But yeah, I don't know where Feathers was hiding that gun. He doesn't have any pockets or anything. He's not got any clothes. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe this was Gromit's plan all along. He was just going to pretend that he was going to fight him with a rolling pin. Figured that Feathers would have other ideas. Goes to imprison himself alongside Wallace and just does something to the trousers. I don't know, did he know the trousers could do this? But I don't know, maybe that wasn't his plan. He just sort of saw the trousers there and he was like, right, plan B. And here we go then with the iconic toy train chase scene, which I guess is a homage to old westerns and their traces on the train. Again, it's not really supposed to make sense. It's a lot of kind of illogical elements to it, like Feathers could just jump off the train at this point and just walk out the door. I think Wallace could quite easily get off the train here. Whether, I don't know, maybe the technotrousers are magnetized. It's kind of a strange thing about the feet to the trousers. Not quite sure how they're programmed. The only thing that really sort of bothered me about this chase scene is Wallace doesn't really do much to sort of help. I mean, he tries to do quite a lot to help, but the only sort of major contribution he makes is what he did just there, which was taking Feathers' gun. Other than that, he doesn't help out very much. But I suppose Gromit doesn't do a huge amount himself. He just seems sort of more competent in what he's doing, whereas Wallace is a bit of a bimbo the whole time. Like with the net grabbing hold of or getting caught on the moose head. Feathers seems pretty capable of just outsmarting them, the way he sends them off on another element. And I love this, of course, there's no way he'd be able to put the track down quickly enough. And it's very lucky he happened to have the corner piece right there. Gromit would have no control over what particular pieces he had at any particular moment. And there's a lot of spare track in there as well. But yeah, again, it's not supposed to make sense. That's the charm of it all. And in the end, it's just a stroke of luck, really, that Feathers flies through the air because of the trousers here, and just happens to land in this bottle. And in the end, even though the train was travelling at quite a speed all the way around the living room, they crashed quite sort of harmlessly into that cupboard. And call back to the way that Gromit came home on the trousers at the start of the short. And here, the only moment in the short where Feathers actually makes a noise. And he's back in jail, or in this case, the zoo. And here we have a little epilogue scene, I guess. Wallace actually back in his clothes for the first time in a while. Actually, I've just noticed, he's been in just that string vest for a large part of the short. And I guess they gave him the reward in cash, in coins, no less. And that newspaper headline is the only time Feathers is actually named in the short. And they just throw the trousers away. I found that a bit puzzling as a kid. Didn't quite understand that. The trousers still seem like a useful thing, but I guess maybe they figured they were more trouble than they're worth or something. Or, I don't know, perhaps obviously they didn't want to make any more stories about the trousers, so they just said, right, let's just say they don't have them anymore. And, again, the trousers clearly do have a mind of their own. So they're just off on their own. Go off on a new adventure of their own. Literally walking off into the sunset. So there we go. It's my favourite of the Wallace and Gromit shorts. Much quicker production time for this one than the Grand Day Out, because Nick Park had a lot of help from other people at Aardman. As you can see from these end credits. And I would have liked to have seen them hold on the trousers a bit longer for these end credits, just be able to continue watching the trousers walk off. But no, it disappears below the horizon quite quickly, but maybe that would have been too difficult to do in stop motion. So there we go. Fade out triumphantly. And that's that.